my name's Remaining Guy 65, but you can just call me Phil, and this is my first video. It's a timeline of all the Atari consoles. First up is the Pong, released in 1975. It didn't have any controllers. Instead, you had to use the dials set right on the consoles. It could only be used by 2 players. Next up is the Super Pong, released in 1976, and it had 4 Pong-like games on it, and still had the 2 dials and for 2 player, but it had amazing graphics for that time. Then came the Super Pong 10, which was Atari's first console with controllers, which were called paddle controls, and you could play from 1 to 4 players. 2 players had to use the dials, and the other 2 players had to use the controllers. The music video wasn't really a video game console, but it played an interesting role in the video game history. It was basically a radio, but you couldn't only plug it into your stereo. You could also plug it into your TV, and it would have amazing effects. Sorry, people. Next came the Super Pong Pro Am, released in 1977. On this system, they finally removed the dials from it, but it was only for 1 to 2 players. Then came the Super Pong Pro Am 10, released in 1977, and it was almost the same, just that it had 1 to 4 players. This system was known as the Ultra Pong Doubles, released in 1977. It was for 4 players divided into 2 teams. The Video Pinball, released as well in 1977, allowed to play, well, pinball on your TV. The Stunt Cycle console was a game about doing stunts on a motorbike, which was really cool due to its controls like motorbike handles set right on the system itself. The 2600 was the most famous system by Atari. It was their first system with more than 1 games, which were all completely different, and it was cartridge based. It was for 1 to 2 players. The controller was a joystick and red button. It also had paddle controllers for it. Now the Game Brain technically was cancelled, so you are very lucky if you manage to get your hands on a prototype plus games. It was a cartridge-based console for 1 to 2 players. It had 2 dials and 2 D-pads and 2 red buttons for 2 players right on the console itself. The Touch Me was the world's first handheld system, which was originally an arcade game, but in 1978 they made a handheld version. It was a game where you had to first let the light. Where the lights next to the buttons lit up in an order, and then you had to press the buttons and repeat it exactly in the right order. And they had lots of levels. Some people say that Microvision was the first handheld console in the world, created by Milton Bradley Company, but it's not. The Cosmos was a handheld system that was supposed to be released in 1979 and have more than 1 game that came on cartridges, but it was cancelled. Only prototypes were released. This is a handheld version of Space Invaders, which had a paddle right on it and was released in 1980. This is a handheld version of Super Breakout. It also had a paddle right on it and was released at the same time as the handheld version of Space Invaders. The 2700 was a home console with cartridge-based games and was for 1 to 2 players with 2 wireless paddle controls without buttons on it. With other buttons on it. Sorry. It was supposed to be released in 1981, but was cancelled. Only prototypes were released. The 2800 was a home console released only in Japan in 1982. It was for 1 to 2 players with cartridge-based games with 2 paddle controls with other buttons on it. The 5100 was also known as the 5200 Junior. and had maximum 2 players. It had the same controls as the 5200, but it was cancelled. Only prototypes were released. Then came the 5200, also in 1982. It had 2 controls with a joystick, a telephone-like button pad. Oh, wait, with a telephone-like button pad, sorry. The 7800 was a console released in 1985 with a controller with joystick and other buttons. The Lynx was a handheld console released in 1989 with different cartridge-based console games. Sorry. The Panther was a cancelled console which was supposed to be released in 1991, but only prototypes were released. Sorry, that's the only information I got. The Jaguar was a home system released in 1993, but didn't have very good success due to the fact that the controller had so many buttons, they were hard to remember. In 1995, they released an add-on for the Jaguar known as Jaguar CD, which played the CD-based games that Atari created for the Jaguar CD. Okay guys, so this was my first video. Well, rate it, comment, subscribe to it if you want to see the next videos. And goodbye for now.